Okay, so I'm really pleased to introduce to you Professor NIKOLAOS FOTOPOULOS from the University of Western Macedonia. I had the great pleasure to meet him on several occasions, and today he's here at the University of Turin and is going to deliver a lecture on conspiracy theory, specifically focusing on the Greek context, and combining several methodologies, the sociological methodology and also some semiotic insights. I'm really sorry because we have a technical problem, as you see, and so we have to use my small laptop in order to show the slides. I'm going to try to fix the projector for your next conference and next conference in Turin. But anyway, we are recording also the conference because it's going to be available on the website of our journal, and I have a selected audience today, so I hope it's going to be really interesting for you and also for us to discuss together on such an important topic as conspiracy theories in Greece. So I give you the floor, and I welcome you and thank you for your visit to Centro.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. To be here in Turin with you together. I'd like to express my warmest gratitude to Massimo and Leone for the invitation. And I'm very optimistic that we'll have many chances in the future, many opportunities to strengthen our collaboration between the universities in the framework of Erasmus or other projects. I would like to start with a presentation. Unfortunately, the condition is a little bit difficult, but I will try to show you a few facets and pictures from Greece in order to understand what is the relation between the education and social vulnerability concerning the impact of austerity measures on Greek educational system. I would like, first of all, to introduce myself. I'm a sociologist in the field of culture and education at the University of Western Macedonia in Florina, in Athens, in Greece. And I would like to show you the framework and the content of my approach in this presentation, which is to highlight the negative impact of crisis in Greece, to analyze together facets of Greek crisis through the scope of social vulnerability, to make a critical interpretations of the Greek crisis and what we have lived all these years after the entrance of Greece in the memorandum era, and to put the Greek case into the whole discussion concerning the theories of conspiracy. Additionally, I would like to spot facets and parameters of austerity through the current educational system and everyday life, and to use the methodological tools or instruments of sociology and cultural studies and semiotic theory. I would like to start with the Greek case. Let's talk about the basic feature of the Greek model in order to understand why Greece was forced to sign a memorandum and to enter in the era of austerity. As we know, in Greece, since 2009, we face a strong financial crisis, fiscal crisis, or debt crisis, which consists on the main reasons why Greece was forced to follow the implementation of the memorandum, at least according to the Soviet systemic rhetoric or systemic reason in Greece, or the systemic mass media, what the mass media says about the crisis. On the other hand, all this period, many people believe that the crisis in Greece is not only a Greek phenomenon, but a European phenomenon. We can say that there are many approaches all these years concerning Greece. For others, Greece is the experimental animal For others, Greece has the signature of the German hegemon. And for others, the crisis is a unique historical chance for implementing a brutal policy of austerity, strengthening all of those who are already powerful, and the small financial and political elites in the whole Europe. And of course, we can see other approaches. For example, the crisis reproduces and maintains the already existing gap between the North and the South, or that the crisis is a vehicle for accelerating the geopolitical changes in the EU and the wider area. Sometimes there is an approach that someone unknown, who may be a collective subject, who has or who plays a very dark, dangerous game against the Greek interests. This is the basis for the development of theories of conspiracy. We can say that the issue of austerity and the issue of crisis in Greece sometimes remains unexplained, and sometimes gets a mysterious character, proving that anything without a stable explanation becomes part of an irrational explanation. That's why we need a stable explanation of the reality in order to understand, in order to make certain interpretations of the reality, in order to understand the social transformation. I think that anything which is out of our logic sometimes gets mystified features which are a solid ground for growing the theories of conspiracy. Let's see now something concerning the memorandum era. After 2009, the interest of Greece in the memorandum era had features such fiscal austerity, debt crisis, the reduction of wages and pensions for many workers and for many retired people, old people. We had the disruption of labor relations, the abolitions of schools and educational institutions, and layoffs of many civil servants and workers from the private sector. I think that this was the realistic framework, and the result was the intensity of a humanitarian crisis. For example, the unemployment in Greece, especially the unemployment of youth people between 16 to 24, reached the 60%. You can understand what is the situation at this period in Greece. And of course, the main issue for Greece remains the value crisis and the ethical devaluation. This situation, I would say, changed dramatically our lives, and especially young people were at the epicenter of this collapse, I would say. For example, we have the needs. I don't know if you have any heard concerning the needs. Needs is an acronym. It's an indicator in the European Union is that young people not in education, employment and training. Okay, in Greece, after recent research, we found that there is a percent, about 17 from people, young people between 16 to 24 who have disappeared from the official statistics. I mean that these young people belong to, these are marginalized people. They are out of social space and they are not in education, training and employment. So the social vulnerability, we can say that consists the new margin of society and includes unemployed people, youth unemployed, single-parent families, migrants, low-income people. All of them are strongly affected by this tough situation. What about the Greek educational system? Before saying anything concerning the education in Greece, I would like to give you the whole situation, the whole atmosphere, the whole environment in Greece. Education in Greece traditionally plays a core role through the Greek society. Consists one of the main tools for social and occupational upward mobility. I mean, in sociology, when we are saying for upward mobility, we mean that the education plays the role of a social lift, social elevator, from the bottom classes to the higher classes. That's why in Greece education was a very crucial and significant issue. In Greece, we can say that expresses the social request for meritocracy and credibility through the unequal social classes. We can say that, especially in Greece, education is linked with the democratization of the Greek society, specifically after the collapse of dictatorship. I don't know if you have an idea that in Greece we had a very tough regime between 1967 to 1974, and education was the vital for the democratization and for the modernization of the Greek society. That's why it's a very important issue today. What was the impact of crisis on education? The impact was very strong and negative. We had the intensity of educational and social inequalities, the early school living, the school violence and bullying. We had the devaluation of the ideal of learning. For example, many years ago, as I said before, young people believed in education. Today, when there is too high rates of unemployment, who could believe in education and training or lifelong learning? This is the problem. And we can observe that we had collective disappointment and depression. Now I would like to show you a few views and facets on the Greek crisis. I think that sometimes when we show pictures of photos for the current social reality, we can shape an indicative view concerning the difficult situation. Sometimes the signs of the pictures are much more stronger than the theoretical description. I think that you know very well from semiotic or for the analysis of pictures, posters, photos, that we can show subtle facets or less invisible parameters of the social reality. Here, this photo is taken on the central highway of Athens. It's a typical and daily view poverty and social exclusion, or after the end of a street market, people who are living on rubbish of others. Here I can remember the thinker Zygmunt Bauman. The Bauman explained the role of modernity in reproducing the rubbish of modernity, people who are rubbish for the social system. And much more, in this photo, someone is looking into the rubbish for a little oil. The characteristic in this picture, we say that here we don't have a typical hobo, a typical homeless, or you understand,
yes,
closed out in French. But someone who probably is kind of from the middle class, and now is belonging to the new outsiders of the system. Maybe he is a retired man. Okay, give you an idea about this picture. Maybe if we had the icon.
The golden dome.
Okay.
Distributing food.
Okay, yes.
Alballata.
It's not a street market, exactly. You can see the black t-shirts. Here I would like to make a specific comment in terms of the role of crisis for the enhancement of the nationalistic movement in Greece. For instance, the rise of the Golden Dawn was based on the political and ideological exploitation of the crisis and the severe impact of austerity on Greek society. This situation gave a boost to the theories of conspiracy and the practices of racism in Greece and violence against migrants and other ethnic minorities. I think that this tendency was accompanied by a systematic devaluation of the Soviet political reason and the status of parliamentary democracy. You can understand why the financial crisis consists on a solid ground for the development of fascism. Okay, I think that you have many historical paradigms in the past, because I think I'm very sure that you know that fascism is a mixture between the populism and an autocratic ideology and authoritarian practice. In this picture, we can see common meals organized by other social institutions and collective organizations like the church, public meals in the world, or NGOs giving humanitarian aid. And the main characteristics of this picture is that include common and civil citizens. They aren't the typical homeless people or people who belong traditionally to the marginal groups. These people, maybe 2-3 years ago, they couldn't imagine that they will be today in a QE for a common meal or for a little bread. And this picture is another kind of tough reality, waiting for an employment benefit or an employment allowance outside of an employment agency. These pictures you can see every week or every month in Greece for the last 5 years. Okay, let's examine now closely the austerity and education. Okay, here I would like to comment your all comments. Okay, this is a picture. Is there a kind of innovation, a kind of reaction? I think that there are many approaches in order to explain what the poet wants to say. Okay, this picture, maybe it's only an empty glass, an empty society, an abandoned glass or an abandoned society. Of course, there are many approaches in order to perceive the concept of the pictures, but in all cases, the picture tries to show a concrete meaning, the emptiness of our emotional situation. I think, okay, maybe it could be more poetic, this approach. Okay, it's provocative. But I believe that, unfortunately, this was the main feeling for many young people the last years in Greece, who were desperately alone in front of this social no way out, from this social impasse. I think that this is the feeling of emptiness. And I would like now to talk concerning the educational inequalities. I think that when we're talking about for education and austerity, we ought to explore carefully the level and the substance of the educational inequalities. Here we have a map from the Europe, but you can see that the regions with red color are the regions who have the less qualification in primary, pre-primary, primary and secondary education. So we have the rich and the skilled north and the poor and unskilled south in the Europe. That's why I told you before concerning the gap. For example, the second shows the presentates the participation of adult learning in lifelong learning. The participation of adults in lifelong learning. You can see here that the north is better and the south participates less than the north. I think that we have another picture from the Greece. This is the map with grey and black areas and the orange and yellow areas. The map shows that the black and grey regions are the more educational problematic districts. I mean that they have the most problematic educational attainments. On the other hand, the yellow and the orange regions are equally problematic, but there is a huge difference. The districts with yellow and orange are rich due to the tourism and the easy way of making money. Exactly, the islands. On the other hand, the regions with black and grey are more poor regions, and we can understand that the problematic educational attainments have two sides, two facets. The first one is the poverty, the unemployment and poorness, black and grey. The second is the easy and fast way of making money, or the unstructured growth. Let's continue. As you can understand, the austerity and the crisis, the financial crisis, of course, had as a result the development of a student movement in Greece and the radicalization, part of young people against the educational reforms which tried to reduce the public spending, which tried to decrease the role of the public sector and to merge schools and educational organizations. Here you can see pictures from the movement, the student movement against the Athena Plan. Athena Plan was an educational reform for the amalgamation of schools and universities in Greece in order to merge. And after the merging of schools, sometimes we have layoffs, and the previous government fired teachers. Okay, a river of students. You can see what has happened.
What year was this? What year, like?
Here is as a kind of reaction, social reaction against the educational reform.
Yeah. What year? Like 2000?
2012. 2012. course, we had classes on the roads, and sometimes violence was an everyday scene on the roads of Athens 2 years ago. Okay. Here I have a small collection in order to, by posters against the austerity measures concerning the role of educational and trade union movement in order to create I would say, a strong reaction to the Greek governmental policy. Okay, here is not translation. I'm trying to give you the central meaning. Okay, the teachers say that's enough. Enough is enough. Stop. Here we have another slogan or motto: bread, freedom, education. That's why I told you before that the education in Greece was linked with a social request for the democratization of our society. This motto was in the middle of dictatorship by the students of this period in the revolt of students of Polytechnic School in Greece in 1973, 17 November. Okay, when the dictatorship collapsed in Greece in 1974. You can understand that we have the same slogan 40 years ago and 40 years later. Here you can see another poster: people for a life with social rights, or the capital stronger and poverty-stricken people. This poster is from the trade union movement, which is supported by the Communist Party in Greece. You can see the dynamic character and the call for fighting. Here we have the grave and the sign of dictatorship, and the slogan, the sign of dictatorship 1967. The slogan was, when the education dies, then the dictatorship comes. And they try to encourage citizens support the strike of teachers.
What is the sign on the right? What is that?
This one.
Oh, on the right side.
The right.
Yes.
There is a bird,
Oh.
phoenix,
Oh, it's a phoenix.
and soldier. Okay, it had the notion of the Renaissance.
Yeah, rebirth of Italian culture. Yes.
Yeah, and a military revolutionary movement. Okay. Of course, you know this painting. Okay. It's a classic symbol. You know the painting of René Magritte.
Yes.
Against the government of trade unionism, you can understand that the struggle or the conflict is not only between the trade union and the government. There is an inside the trade union movement. Okay, for independent class movement against the manipulation and the sovereign political consensus. You can see that the conflict is inside into the heart of trade union movement sometimes. And here we have another poster, fight against the humanitarian crisis on Greek schools. No child without bread and free of charge healthcare for all children. Is another one poster which tries to emphasize or to encourage people, to motivate people, to activate people to face the humanitarian crisis in Greece. And you have heard, I think, that the motto of Pink Floyd, head teacher, leave the kids alone. It's something different. Head teacher, keep fighting. Okay, keep fighting against the problem, against the humanitarian crisis, against the manipulation of your life. Get up, stand up for your right, for your life. You can understand what is the meaning. In conclusion, in order to have another discussion, this is a challenge. To share okay, our experiences or to react sometimes in this phenomenon. In Greece, I would say that we have many reasons to be optimistic. Many of us believe that the crisis may become an opportunity to construct a new pathway for a more pure, more direct democracy. I think that the social request for social emancipation is always open, and the request for growth and social cohesion, especially in the European area. I think that this necessity should be our common interest in a more democratic, socially fair, multicultural and progressive Europe. I think that this is the discussion today. Behind the theory of conspiracy, okay, that's why I mentioned before that when we are not ready to explain the reality or the transition, the social information or the transformation, we believe that someone who is behind the scene or who knows controls everything. Okay, I think that the only life that we have is the real life, and it is certain that if we analyze in a rational way our social phenomena, we will find a logical or a socially fair solution. I don't want to say that I'm pessimistic guy. Okay, I think that that's why I told you before, we have many reasons to be optimistic. So, I invite you in Greece in the summer in order to see the sun effects of Greece. Here is the culture of sun, okay, the Mediterranean culture. So we have many reasons to be optimistic that we have to work together. If you don't visit the islands in Greece, you have to do it as soon as possible. Here is the sun set from Santorini in Cyclades. Thank you very much.
So thank you. It was a very sharp transition between the first pictures and the last ones, and it is a sort of provocation that you offered to us. Also, it was emphasized by the fact that the battery of the laptop was dying, so the transition was even faster. But my question to you is, how is the Golden Dawn, for instance, explaining the crisis to people who are suffering from it and might become supporters of this movement? So what is it that Golden Dawn leaders say to Greek fellow citizens in order to explain the crisis? Who's the culprit? Who's the responsibility according to them?
Okay, I think that there is a dark rhetoric. I mean that people who are unskilled, people who are in a very bad financial situation, don't have the clear mind to understand what happened everywhere. I think that the main argument is the lack of social trust in institutions, in social policy, and when you have the rate of unemployment for the youth people close to 6%, the general rate of unemployment about 25%, there is a material ground in order to develop this kind of dark rhetoric. I think that political movements or schemes like the Ludo, either nationalist movements everywhere in Europe, have the ability to affect people when they are trying to approach vital needs. I mean, when you are hungry, when you are unemployed, when you are homeless, when you belong to the middle class and now you are at the bottom class. I think that this material situation was the solid ground in order to be developed a movement like this one.
Yes. So what you're saying is that the spreading of this right-wing movement, because of course there are right-wing movements that spread also in other European countries or United States or in the rest of the world. But in some cases they spread also when the society is very rich, like in Sweden, Norway, they have right-wing movements. But basically you're saying that Golden Dawn didn't really have a rhetoric, but it tried to profit by the extreme poverty of part of the population and this sense of decline.
Yes, yes, because they exploited the disappointment of people. And on this disappointment, they built something which, who knows what will happen in the future. I don't know, I'm not sure about the evolution of this movement, okay, but I think that this tendency has been proven historically. We had seen in the past the rise of fascism or the Nazi movement, and these evolutions came after a financial crisis. Okay, you can remember what happened between 1920 and 1930, 1935 in Germany and Italy. Yeah. I think that in Europe we have a long experience. That's why we need to be, I think, strong against these movements sometimes.
Yes. But what is Golden Dawn, for instance, saying about the role of Germany in European economy? Because on the one hand, they seem to have the Nazi party as a model, even the usage of some symbols, the swastika. But on the other hand, there is a lot of tension with Germany as a contemporary country, contemporary state and economy. So what is the relation that they have with Germany in the rhetoric? How do they talk about it?
Okay. I'm not specialized in these themes, which is in the heart of political science.
Yes.
Okay. But I think that all movements try to find their heritage in something in the historical past. That's why the Nazi movement in Germany had created its own symbols, language, signs. I think that this is the framework, certain framework that every movement wants to be developed.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm clear.
Yeah, sure. No, absolutely. And it's a very complex phenomenon, I guess. But it was important to point, as you did, to the fact that this crisis is having a huge impact on the educational system.
Okay, that's why.
And of course, the consequences will probably invest themselves. Not even now, maybe 10 years or 15 years. So we're going to have a generation that was schooled in the public schools or universities of the crisis. So we don't know what kind of ideas they will have in 10 years or 15 years.
That's why, Massimo, we believe that education is the only rational and orthological instrument that we have as a society. And through the pedagogy or through our schools, our university, we can develop the logic, the rational logic, the rational reason, which is our common heritage after the era of enlightenment, after modernity, and specifically we have lived the severe impact of fascism in Europe. That's why we have to be, I would say, stronger than ever in order to face and to react to these historical return.
Okay. Are there any questions?
How does it feel to be some kind of inventor of democracy, yet seeing and failing, seeing democracy failing? I know you're failing.
Okay, exactly. I think this is the problem sometimes. Okay, every nationalistic movement, plays its own role. The problem is that democracy, parliamentary democracy, not only in Greece, in Europe, we can see now what happens in Europe. I think that all this political consensus in the framework of new liberalism changed drastically the social reality. I think that we need not a false democracy with scandals, with inequalities, with you can understand. We need, that's why I told before, a pure democracy, a more direct democracy between the governments and the citizens. We need a more fair democracy. I think that this is the fault, and in this rupture could develop movements like the Golden Dawn or other nationalistic movements. That's why we need a solid ground for the development of democracy nowadays. And education, of course, can play a very crucial and significant role in this process.
Yeah, well, this is certainly important. At the same time, it's very difficult to keep the educational level of a society. It's a little bit of a vicious circle. In Italy, we have the same problem with other proportions. On the one hand, education is extremely important to counter extremists or this kind of violent ideologies. But at the same time, the educational system is probably the first sector that is that suffers from cuts in financing. When there is an economic crisis. So it is very difficult to, like we have the same in Italian universities. So we have fewer scholarships for students, and many students that were workers and students at the same time had to give up studying because they didn't receive any grants anymore. So it's
okay. May I ask something to Italian students? Okay, what is the situation in Italy, especially in the educational system? Are you satisfied in the transition? Okay, try to explain what happened or what happens in Greece. Here, can you give me
from the position of students or PhDs?
a view in order to
A recent reforms in education, but really I don't know what it's all about.
It's a very long. I can give you several conferences. But it's a very. Of course, there is an impact of the economic, first financial, then the economic crisis And but there is also a deeper transformation. For instance, our education system is becoming more and more bureaucratic. I think, as a consequence of there is this sort of reaction of the system that goes toward very heavy bureaucratization, and in a way it is a consequence of the crisis, because it is a reaction to having fewer resources. The system believes that by simply increasing bureaucracy, problems will be solved. But
I think that the answer to the bureaucratization is the democratization of the educational system and the tendency or the perspective of social emancipation, how to liberate possibilities and potentials. I think that this should be the role of democratic education system, the perspective of social emancipation. But the question is, in a new liberal global society, who wants critical students, critical citizens? This is the question. Yes. Sometimes, and teachers, students are becoming a systemic part of this problem, of this difficult situation.
Yes. So we are the victims of a conspiracy.
We are the victims.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we are the victims of a conspiracy. So, is there any other question? Or?
I wanted to make a little comment on the question about conspiracy theory. Because I've been in Greece for a semiotic conference last time, it was 2013, also organized with me. And we went to Thessaloniki, which was a really beautiful and charming city. But it was also very clear, very self-evident, the effects that the crisis was having on Greece. And it was really heartbreaking, also for a visiting. And I think it is impossible not to start to wonder why. Why is this happening? And I think that maybe as it's a kind of difficult question to answer, and also common people have not always the competences to understand what a financial crisis is and how it arises, you start immediately to look for simpler answers. And it's also the groups that can answer these questions are also the groups that can in some way try to orient the public discussion to gain consensus.
Okay, I'm trying to understand your question. The question...
it was more sort of maybe the power of groups like the Golden Dawn is also that they have a simpler answer to a very strong question, which is the question why.
Of course, is a simple answer to a very difficult question, but that's why I told before that who knows what will happen in the future. Okay, but I want to be alert when we have movements like this. I don't want to be in a mood situation, okay, where we believe that everything is going well and who cares, okay. Of course there are extreme minorities from the extreme left wing to the extreme right wing. Okay, the spectrum is very big, okay, very wide. But I think that if we don't cultivate our democracy and our social, human, political rights through our educational systems, I think that maybe in the future we'll face more difficult problems, like the nationalistic problems or the fundamentalistic approaches of the society. Okay, this is not for Greece, but for other countries, there is a very huge problem. In Germany, in France, okay, there is a fundamentalist movements. That's why I think that Europe needs to turn page towards a different perspective, more democratic perspective, and I think that especially the EU has to face the gap between the North itself. I think that the pictures showed exactly what I mean. And education is a very special, very crucial indicator to make a diagnosis concerning the future.
It's true. Okay. So, any other questions or comments? So we thank you once again.
Maybe the next year.
Sorry for technicalities, but
Okay.
the pictures of some is it Santorini or
I think
yeah, pictures of Santorini are so beautiful that they actually very attractive even on small screens.